How are you doing today, sir?
Excellent.
Really nice to meet you. I've been a fan of your work for a while, so it's we should tell people where we are right now without revealing what town, if we will. But like, where are we?
No, it's fine. We're in my home studio in Encino, and I have one home studio here, and then I have 3 duplicates of this studio in Santa Monica at Remote Control, where Hans Zimmer is based, and that's where my assistants work, and I can easily throw information around 3D between these 4 studios, and it's all in sync with one another. So it's a really good thing to have.
When you say duplicate studios, are they literally set up exactly the same?
99%. So the control surface would be exactly the same keyboard, same touchscreen, same fader masses, same 2 analog synths, same speaker setup, the same controllers here. Actually, if we were to measure it, it's exactly the same. And I'll tell you why I did that. It's like I want to be able to work in all those 4 studios if I need to, and my guys need to be able to work in every other studio. So if you would switch this around to that and that around to that, and the monitor is ever so slightly like that, when you work only in this studio, your brain is adjusted to go to the perfect angle to the right to see what you want to see. But if it's like 10 inches off, every time it's like, and then you have to look there. And if you want to grab something that's normally there, and it's like, now it's over there. It's very tiresome, it wears you out, and if you make 16 hours a day for months and months and months in a row until the movie's done, you'll feel a little more fit because you have all those things in place.
I completely understand what you're saying, and it actually makes sense, because you want it to feel the same no matter where you are. I totally get it. Let's go backwards a little bit. And when did you first realize you wanted to do stuff for movies? Compose music?
96.
What was it? A certain movie, or was it?
Yeah, I mean, this was around the time that I started Junkie XL, and I still had a booming artist career. I was touring around the world, and I released a lot of dance records and electronic tracks, but they always had a crossover element with guitars or even strings or brass. And I saw this alternative movie in Europe that used tracks from my records. They licensed those tracks to be, to use in the film. And I saw the film and I was like, wow. I always loved films and I always loved film score, but I've never seen a movie with my music in it. And I saw how it worked to picture. And I was like, that's interesting. And that sparked, my imagination. And then even more so, in '97, the late '97, when The Blade with Wesley Snipes came out, and that whole club scene where the blood comes down.
Yeah.
That is also a track that they licensed from my first record that came out in '97, and that just blew me away. And that's when I got really interested, and then I started pursuing it. And I did a few alternative movies in Europe, and then I got an interesting break where Resident Evil was looking for an additional composer, the first Resident Evil, and I did 6 to 8 scenes for that. And then after that I worked with Jason Bentley, the music coordinator, head of music from KCRW here in Los Angeles. He invited me to come out to LA to work on the Matrix movies. Now that material was not used for the Matrix movies itself, but it was used for the video game. But that those steps became bigger and bigger to get involved in the movie industry. And then after 2002, in 2002, I had a worldwide hit with A Little Less Conversation, the Elvis remix. It was like #1 in 24 or 26 countries. I came to LA. And I decided, okay, I want to do this for real. I want to become a film composer. And I thought about it for a long time, how to tackle this. And I didn't think that it was right at that time to walk into a film studio and say, hey, I'm Tom, Junkie XL, I want to score one of your movies. And then all those people would say, yeah, right. So what's your experience? The club scene in The Blade, that wasn't even scored, but that was licensed. So that's what you run into, when you're an artist. And I said, okay, let's do this differently. And I decided to take a back seat in the bus and just see how all these other composers are actually scoring a film. So I started assisting Harry Gregson Williams on a bunch of films. While I had that #1 hit in 26 countries, I was sitting in his basement chopping up samples as an assistant. So that was really awkward, but it was great. And I was willing to leave that ego at the door and just work really hard to get my feet wet in the film scoring industry. I met all these people from studios that tested me out, and they threw little bits and pieces at me, and to see what I was all about, and if I could deliver fast, if I could handle criticism and all that stuff. And step by step it went forward. And then I got a break in 2005, 2006, when there were some issues on the Catwoman movie that came out through Warner Brothers. And they asked me, can you do these 10, 15 scenes for that movie? But you only have 10 days to do it. And I said, okay, let's do it. And I delivered, and they were happy. And that, raised my profile a little bit. And then I got a phone call from Hans in 2007 saying like, hey, everybody tells me I should be calling you, but I have no idea who you are. so I went to Remote Control, and I saw Hans, and then he said, well, this is so great. Why don't you come to Remote Control, and then, you can help me with movies. And I thought about it for a week, and I said, no. And then he said, well, no hard feelings. Good luck with your career. We always stayed in touch and met every now and then. And then when he worked on Inception, he called me and said, I think I've got a great project here that you would be great at. And so I came to Remote. The movie was done, the score was done, but he was looking with Nolan for a sort of experimental movie remix where it's a long piece of music with a pulse to it. That would be a nice roundup of what the whole score of the movie was. Not intended for the clubs or anything like that, but just like an interesting approach. So that was our first real collaboration. And then after that, we did that again on the second Sherlock Holmes. And then he invited me to work on Megamind, the DreamWorks movie, which I had a little part in. And then after that, it was Madagascar 3 that I had quite a big part in. And that's the moment when he said, do you want to reconsider what you said 4 years ago by not joining me? And I said, okay, let's do it. And then I basically packed up my studio, and I got a room there. And I started in a very small room because I didn't need much space. And then we worked, I did some stuff for him on The Dark Knight Rises, the collaboration that he had with Chris Nolan. And then we did Man of Steel, and my part of Man of Steel was quite elaborate on that movie. And that's how I got to know Zack Snyder. And then Zack offered me 300 Rise of an Empire, and because 300 Rise of an Empire I got Divergent, and because of 300 Rise of an Empire and some older movies that I did, George Miller offered me Fury Road, and it went on, and that led to Run All Night. And now I have a few other movies starting in the next 6, 7, 8 months.
That's a very a fucking cool story. Jumping into, if you could go back in time and offer yourself any advice, especially over the last few years, I'm sure you've learned a lot about composing and maybe how to save time or whatever it is there any advice you'd give yourself back at the beginning that would maybe help you or help other composers?
Yeah, when I was 18, I would say to myself, chill the beep out.
Right. That's the advice?
Yeah.
Are you trying to say that when you were 18 you were doing things you shouldn't have been doing?
No. When I was 18, like, I wanted a career so badly that, I pushed myself to heart, but I also pushed people around me to heart. And also, if music should talk for itself. So if let's say I'm this beginning artist and you're this respected journalist for this website, and I give you a demo, and I say, oh great, I'll listen to it, and then 2 hours later, did you listen? I was like, well, I just came home, but give me like half an hour, 25 minutes later, and you know what I mean? That's what I did, and that's what I would say. Is like, come on, just chill out, just like you give music. If he plays it and he likes it, something will come out of it, and if he doesn't like it, then nothing will come out of it. But it's out of your hands. Don't push it. And I was very aggressive to people, A&R managers or remixes that I approached. And
some could argue, though, maybe it all worked out for the best. Because you are right.
But you can be very creative at it. I mean, for instance, when I was 16 or 17, I would make a demo, and then I would give it to a journalist of a well-known paper with a bag of groceries. And the guy was like, why are you giving me a bag of groceries? It's like, well, the 30 minutes that you take today to go out to the supermarket to do groceries, now you can stay at home and listen to my demo. because the groceries are here. You don't need to go to the grocery store.
I don't know if I've ever heard someone doing that before, but that's not a bad idea.
No, but you can be creative with it. And or have
No,
have fun with it.
What typically describe your process in terms of when you're starting a project? Do you compose a lot when you are without the material? Like, are you know what I mean? Or do you have to have the material in front of you when you're composing in terms of the visuals to get?
Oh, so this is what I like to do. I like to read the script and then talk with the director, not even seeing the picture yet. Watching the picture has an advantage, but it has a massive disadvantage too. When you read a book and then in your head you start fantasizing like how it looks and how your favorite character looks and how this looks, and it says, and we're entering this deep forest, and then in your head you have your deep forest. So your mind is very open, like a sponge, and everything that you fantasize about could be part of what you want to achieve. So if I read a script, like I can wander musically everywhere, and nothing is limiting me at that specific point. Even more so when you work on a cue level, just like a cue of 20 seconds, but you want to write a theme for that character. You only have 20 seconds to develop that theme. I think it's a nicer approach that based on reading a script, I just get into the skin of our main character and I'm just like, what is this character all about? What would he be like in real life, and what kind of person? And then in long form, you write a theme that you feel fits with this character. And then by the time you watch the movie and you watch the scene of 20 seconds, you look at your theme that you wrote of 6 minutes and you think like, which section of this theme would be perfect for these 20 seconds? And then you can grab stuff. That's why I call it a sketchbook or a demo painting or whatever you want to call it. And I find it very helpful. Also, there's another advantage of it, that by reading the script, talking to the director, then seeing the rough cut of the movie just once, just let's leave it at that. Then I just go off and write all these themes and make music like I did on Run All Night. And then at the end of it, I take 10 days or 14 days to write 50 minutes of music or an hour of music. I give them a USB stick and I say, hey, just play this in the car on your way home. I feel this is what our movie is. And then I get a phone call back at 11:45 at night. It's like, it's awesome. This is what I was hoping for. Or you get a phone call. I think we need to do something else. Either or.
Right.
It's clear that, or I'm not hitting the right spot, or I do hit the right spot. But I usually am right after reading the script, talking to the director, and then seeing the movie once, and then go off making a couple of demos with. 300 Rise of an Empire, there was so little time to do the score. So Zach explained to me because he was the producer on that movie, but the director was not in the country at that specific point. So Zach explained me the story. I saw the movie once, and then I said, give me 3 weeks. He said, okay, but it's going to be tight. And I said, yeah, give me 3 weeks. And so 3 weeks, whole movie was rescored. We played the whole thing, and he said, it's awesome. I have one note.
Wait. That is Zach? He likes the word awesome.
Yeah, I know. And he said something else in front of it, which I'll say.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Right.
Anyway, and then he said, I've got one note. Can you make it a little more awesome? And I said, yeah, I can do that. So that was the other 2 weeks. And then we scored on Mother's Day, which was unheard of, but that's how it worked out. And we got all these wonderful players in LA to play on Mother's Day, and we had roses and chocolate for the ladies, and we had a beer for the guys, or something like that. And it was fun.
When you are typically working, I've spoken to a lot of screenwriters, and they'll talk about like the golden period where they wake up in the first 4 hours of the day, they're really energized, and then it sort of diminishes, like diminishing returns throughout the day. Other screenwriters tell me they can go 9 to 5. It's just regimented.
Yeah.
For you, what is your typical? Do you have a golden period during the day when you're writing?
I've got two, and the rest is like downtime. So in a downtime period, there's still so much that needs to be done in a studio that just takes man hours, but not creativity. But my golden hour. Let's go with the golden periods. It's from 5, 6 a.m. to 10, 11. And then I have a downtime to 3 to 4 p.m. And then I start, waking up again. And then it can go up to 10, 11 o'clock, but then it stops. So if I need to pull 16, 18-hour days, which I do, it's not going to be 100% creative constantly. So in the down hours, you do things like, I was supposed to do a conform of this cue to the new picture. You don't need necessarily creativity for that. You just open up the picture, you open up the cue as you had it before. It's like, okay, this part needs to go, okay, that part needs to go, oh, this needs to be a little longer. You don't need a lot of creativity for that. Or, oh, hey, there's like 40 emails that came in over the last 6 hours. Let's answer those emails. Or doing an interview, or having a meeting with your manager about what you want to do for the rest of the week. Or Skype with my assistants in Santa Monica. It's like, hey, how's it going? What did you guys do this morning? What shall we do later today? So there's a lot of stuff that you can do in the down hours. And then when I feel the device starts burning again, the laptop closes, the phone goes out, the door gets locked, and then for 4 hours, 5 hours, I continue.
I completely get it. Let's talk about the music and Run All Night. How did you decide to do what you did? Was it, let's start with that.
Okay, so this is the interesting thing. It's like the same scenario happens as what I just described. So Vice President of Music calls me saying like, hey, I've got this movie for you, you would be great for. And I said, so what's the movie about? And then I didn't talk to the director, so in 30 minutes he explains me in detail what the movie is. And I hadn't seen it at that point, and I didn't read the script. It was just him talking about how the movie was. And then I started, and I wasn't even sure of the job yet. So he said, it would be great if you did a demo of a theme, and then we can convince the director, that you would be the great guy for it. So based on that, I started researching movies where a mob boss or a hitman was a main character throughout the film. And I went back as early as in the early 60s to Il Professionale with Jean-Paul Belmondo, and I think Morricone did the score for that. And I just went through all these movies. I mean, the most classic one is the Godfather. And this is what I found, and this goes on till the early 80s, and then it changes. From the 60s to the early 80s, all these movies were scored with a main theme that is very emotional. It's not action, it's not brutal, it's not big and nasty. Very emotional harmonies and very emotional melodies. I'm sure a lot of people don't necessarily know what Il Professionale is, but everybody knows The Godfather, and everybody knows it's such a brutal movie. There's so much violence, there's so much gruesome things happening. But the theme is one of the most emotional themes, I think, written in film history. And it underscores potentially the grief and misery that these characters cause. Or maybe it's the deeper, in The Godfather, it's all the deeper layers of Corleone, how sad of a person he is, and how lonely, and he has nobody. So I thought that was an interesting concept. And now in the 80s, for these type of movies, it shifts. And now the main theme is like da 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 da, because it's action, action, action. And from that point on, rarely for these type of movies, even now, any action movie with a killer or with anything like that, it's only scored as an action thing. And I thought, for this particular movie, because we are talking about a relationship between older guys that look back what sins they have committed over the 30, 40 years that they work together, and the issues that they have with that, on top of that, the very troubled relationships with both their sons. I thought this was a perfect movie to try that as an exercise, and write a very emotional theme. And when I sent that to the director, he fell in love with it immediately, and it works so well throughout the film.
Because we've been talking for a while already, I have to talk about, I mentioned to you off camera, I believe, I fucking love, and I'm going to curse, the Man of Steel soundtrack. I've listened to it like 1,000 times. For you, were you a fan of superheroes growing up? What did it mean to be a part of that, working on that soundtrack with Hans?
I mean, it meant a lot. And comics have been a major part of my life. Actually, the comic I grew up with, you know, like on a really, really young age, was Tarzan. That was the first comic I can remember, you know, reading and having it, you know, every week, episodes and things like that. And then pretty soon after that, it was Spider-Man. And when I was 6, 7, like for me, Batman was like a little too dark, a little too scary. So my parents didn't allow me to read that. But then later I was able to read it. And for me, the twist, which is the style of how these movies are now being made, was when Frank Miller got involved. That's when it got so dark and gritty, and I love his style. And also the two Sin City movies, apart from what people say about story development or character development, I mean, but just look at them. I mean, what a style that is.
I agree. But you didn't answer what it was like being part of Man of Steel.
Oh, sorry, I got sidetracked.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Back to Man of Steel. I mean, I shouldn't say this, but I would do those movies for free. You know,
I've heard that from other people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
I'm just now going to talk to my agent. I'm sorry, mea culpa.
No, I mean, but that's like the thing is, and a lot of artists say this. It's like when you put your heart and soul into something, you want people to hear it. You want people to see it.
Yeah.
You want to be a part of something that resonates.
Yeah.
And you know, being involved in a project like that, where you know the whole planet is very interested in seeing it and hearing it, it has to be cool.
But you know what's interesting is that Hans and I met Zach last week, and he said something in general about these superhero movies, which I can very much relate to based on Man of Steel. You know, all these heroes, whether it's like, I mean, Tarzan we haven't seen for a while, but you know,
He's about to be back.
Yeah, Tarzan, Peter Pan, Cinderella, the Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, all the Marvel comics. All these characters are bigger than all the directors that ever dealt with them, are bigger than all the cartoonists that drew them, are bigger than any composer that would ever work on them. Batman will be around in 100 years. Superman will be around in 150 years. Spider-Man would still be around in some form in 200 years. It's such a cultural thing. So the only thing that you know when you work on a movie on Man of Steel, in 10 years somebody else is going to do the music for Man of Steel. And a different director will be doing Man of Steel. That's the reality. So the only thing that you can do when you're in it is to give it not only your best, but your vision on what this character is when you become one with that character. Now, what you always will see, that because these characters are bigger than ourselves, that everybody that reads the comics, like yourself, you're a big fan of Man of Steel.
Yeah.
So whatever Zach's vision was of Man of Steel and Hans's vision of the score matched completely what you were hoping for and what really hits your stomach and your soul, like, oh, that is my Man of Steel. But then there are other people that say, oh, I wish Man of Steel was a little bit like this, and then if another director takes over, maybe they like what they did. I mean, there are people that loved the Batman with George Clooney and with Val Kilmer.
That's a minority though.
Yeah,
a small minority.
I know, but I mean, like, it wasn't my cup of tea, you
Right.
know. But I mean, and that's the same with music, you know. I mean, all these movies get reboots because the theme of the movie or what the movie's about is bigger than what we are. You know, I mean, I'm curious to see, you know, for instance, when a new Alien comes out with a new designed alien monster, you know, must be a tough one to get away from Geiger, you know, to invent a new. But you know it's going to happen eventually.
Oh, it's 100% going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a priority. You know,
yeah, but you know what I'm saying is like
Yeah.
all these themes, and that's what I'm heading at. All these themes of these movies, all these characters are bigger than what we are, and these are not necessarily my words, but this is how Zach explained it, his vision on these comics, and I thought he was really right. It really resonated with me when he said that.
I want to get into talking about Fury Road, but I have to do a follow-up. You're obviously you're working with Hans on Batman v Superman, which has Dawn of Justice as the title, and I'll say on record, I'm not a fan of the Dawn of Justice. I understand why they're doing it, but I wish it was just Batman v Superman. I have to say this in front of everyone, because I like putting myself apparently in these interviews. What was it like when Hans said, do you want to be a part of this? And do you want to maybe work on Batman?
It was great to hear it. I got chills through my spine. And I'll leave it at that.
I'll leave one more last thing, and then I'll leave you be. The movie doesn't come out for like a year. It's far away. Mm-hmm. But obviously, Zach wrapped a while ago, and this is one of these long post-production processes. Is it a project that you are going to be continuing to work on throughout the next year, or are you do you know what I mean? What's your time frame on it?
No comment.
You're fucking good at that. Let's jump into Fury Road, because I've seen a bunch of footage from it, and it looks utterly insane, spectacular, and so much crazier than I think anyone was expecting. How did you first get involved in Fury Road, and when did you first realize, holy shit, this movie is going to be monstrous?
Well, to bring up that same person, Darren Hickman, the vice president of Warner Brothers, who was in Sydney meeting George Miller 19 months ago. And I was in the middle of wrapping up 300, the final mix. The music was already done. And so it's Monday afternoon, 4 o'clock, I get a phone call, and I see it's Darren. It's like, hey Darren, what's up? And he's like, so what are you doing tonight? I said, no, nothing much. Okay, well, then you should take a cab to the airport right now, because I got you a ticket to Sydney. It's like, why? It's like, well, I'm here with George Miller, the director on Mad Max, and I was like, and I said, we want you to come out. I played him some music, and he loved it, and he wants to meet you. And it's like, okay. So I called my wife and quickly got some clothes together, and before I knew it, I was at the airport and on a 16-hour flight to Sydney. I got out of the plane. It was 7:30 in the morning there. Went straight to his office, and it was a little gibberish, because of the flight. And I was having a coffee, and I was supposed to meet him. I saw the movie first. So they showed me this, like, okay, go sit in the theater, and I just sit there, and the movie was 3 hours at that point. So I was just sitting there, and it's like insane.
Well, when you saw that version, the thing that's taken me, I don't mean to interrupt, but when I saw the footage I've seen, it looks like it's been, I don't want to use the term color corrected, but it looks like it's visually been played with to give it this surreal kind of, it just looks unbelievable.
But at that point, the movie had no beginning, and it had no ending. So the first and the last act weren't there. The second act was there, and that was 3 hours. So, the reason why it looks beautiful is that he actually built very, very massive scenes in Namibia and Africa to film it. So when you see 500 guys in a shot, there are 500 guys in a shot. I mean, I think they were there with 950 people filming. I mean, it was unheard of. These trucks were all made in Australia. They were shipped to Africa to film. So there's not a lot of CGI in there. I mean, there's one scene that has a lot of CGI. That's just a few minutes, but the rest of it, it's just all filmed. So even when I saw it, it just looked fantastic. And so I was blown away. I came down and I was still like, what did I just see? It's so overwhelming what you see. So then we walk into the office, and I was supposed just to shake hands with George, and then the day after we would meet and I could process what I saw. And so we started talking, and then I said, this and that. So he's like, so where you come from and what do you do? And they said, oh, this and this. And then I asked him some questions about the movie, and then I said, but it's interesting because I love math. And then he's like, what? I said, well, I love math. And he said, oh, so what do you mean with that? And I said, well, in music, there's always things like you use certain combinations of numbers that make sense, and then you round them up, and then you take that somewhere else. And he was like, but it's like, but that's what I do with editing too. And then we started talking about math, and then that turned into a 4-hour conversation. I was only talked to him for 5 minutes. And then after 4 hours, it's like, okay, George, you really need to go now to this meeting. It's like, yeah, okay, I'll see you tomorrow morning. And then Darren and I had a nice dinner, and that whole night I couldn't sleep. I was so excited. And I wrote down all these ideas that I had. And then the next morning I came in, and he said, so what do you think? And I came with this whole plan, what I wanted to do. And he's very good at listening. He can just sit there for 2 hours, and I was talking for 2 hours straight, like a monologue, and then he said, that sounds great. And then he shook my hand and he said, I want you to be the composer on this film. And then that same night I flew back to LA, and I sat at home on the couch, gone for just 2 days, and was like, it's like, what just happened, And then I got very inspired, and I started writing pieces of music for scenes, because these scenes are so long, it didn't make sense to write sketchbook scenes, like what I talked about with Run All Night. The scenes are so long. Some scenes are like, there's one cue that's 26 minutes. One continuous piece of music that's 26 minutes. So it didn't make sense to write a sketchbook of 26 minutes and then try to figure out how to do it in 26 minutes. It's like, okay, let's just start. But that was so early on. The film was still very rough, and a lot of things got trimmed down and things like that. But the initial main themes were written in the 4 weeks after that first meeting, and those themes never changed till today. And then there were a lot of arrangements changed, and a lot of extra programming, and then multiple recording sessions with orchestra and things like that. But the themes, the initial idea for the theme was there, and it never changed.
I'm very curious if there's ever going to be, because I think the final release will be like 2 hours or 2:15 or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
I'm very curious what it's going to be, if he'll ever show this crazy extended cut, like the unedit, if you will.
I'm sure, I mean, I cannot speak for him, but I'm sure that he will release some long form version of this on a DVD.
Yeah,
it happens with all these interesting saga epic type of movies.
But it's also interesting because if you saw a version that's 3 hours without the beginning and end, that means that after he added that stuff, there's like a 3-something hour version of this movie that
I think he has like 500 hours worth of film.
Yeah, I mean, this is literally the longest production of a big budget movie I've ever heard of.
I think it's
in
4
history.
years. I think I don't know that, but I think it's around 4 years that they've been working on this.
But I mean, this is not a cheap movie. This was an expensive movie from the get-go, and to have it, 4 years or whatever, it's unheard of. It's just, I can't believe we're finally seeing it this year.
Okay.
Are you finally done with it? Are you finished?
Well, I'm still on standby. Like I said, they're still mixing, so they could run into an issue that they can't fix on the stage, and then I would get a phone call and to say like, hey Tom, can you come in and can you look at this? Is this still right, or do you want to work on this in the studio? Or hasn't happened yet. So I think everything they're working on is fine.
When you obviously you wrote a lot of music for Fury Road, but generally when they release soundtracks or whatever, it's like 70 minutes or whatever. I'm assuming you wrote a lot more music than that.
Way more.
Exactly. Is there a plan for you to release like everything that you composed, or
not everything, but a lot? So usually it's always that. Okay, so this is the thing. If it were up to me, I would release all the 4 hours that I have for $2.99.
Right.
But you can't do that, because you shoot other record companies in the foot, and iTunes doesn't allow you to do that. Things like that. But you are allowed to do certain things. So I'll Run All Night, and I thought that was splendid. It's like a normal CD would cost, I think, $10, $9.99, and you would get 73 minutes. So now we bumped it up to 12, or iTunes bumped it up to 12. But then you get the 90 minutes of score as it appears in the movie, plus you get my 55-minute sketchbook that I wrote for this film. So for $2 more, you almost have 2 hours and 20 minutes or 2 hours and 50 minutes of music if you wanted to listen to that.
Sure.
You don't have to. You can buy the shorter version too. And for Mad Max, we're going to do something similar. I think my standpoint is that I want my music to be accessible for everybody for the least amount of money possible, but I have to play according to the rules of what iTunes wants and what Water Tower Music wants and what the other record companies want. But therefore, we are able to upload certain things on YouTube that don't cost anything. You can just play them, and that's why we made 2 parts of this sketchbook available earlier this week, and we're going to make the other 2 available when this interview goes online. And so that's a nice way of sharing music with people.
I've often said, I have friends in the music industry, and I've often said many times that I think that it would be great if music was priced a little bit more of an impulse buy rather than sometimes stores sell CDs for the same price as a Blu-ray, and I think that it's not right.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not the expert in music. This is just my outside perspective.
Yeah, I don't want to get involved in the financial model that the recording industry or the retailers at this point are trying, but I'm just hoping that eventually music becomes very cheap, available to people, and obviously we need some sort of a business model that people, because for me it's different, just doing the film score is a job. Releasing the film score is it's an afterthought, because the music you're making should be perfect for the film, and then when the film is done, when everybody's happy, then that goes out of the way, and then it's like, okay, let's see what we have here for the whole film and the demos that I wrote. Let's now make the most exciting CD possible. But it's a different process as a band like Coldplay who spends a year writing a new album and releases that, and that is their prime product.
100%.
For them to do a documentary on the CD would be their afterthought.
Yes. No, exactly.
So they're done recording the CD, it comes out, everybody loves it, and then they're like, okay guys, we have this footage of the making of. How can we make a very exciting documentary about how we made this album? But it is an afterthought. It's not their prime business. I know another movie I will be doing this year, which is Point Break. That comes out in December.
I'm very familiar with the Point Break. I call it remake. Or is it reboot? Or do you just call it Point Break?
I call it Point Break.
That's actually something I'm very curious about, because I didn't know you were involved with it. It makes sense that you'd be involved with it, though, when I think about what kind of action is in the film and like your musical landscape that you can create around those set pieces. Were you apprehensive to get involved with this, or did you grow up with the Patrick Swayze movie and say, I need to do this?
No comment yet.
Okay.
I just don't talk about stuff that is like a year away from coming out. It's causing issues. I've learned from the past.
Did you learn this from Batman Superman? Or did you learn this from which project?
No, I mean, this goes back to my early 20s when I was supposed to do a remix for a well-known artist, and I started yapping about it in the press. Well, I should have kept my mouth shut, It's like, so I learned this now. That's
okay. Well, let me ask you this. How long does it typically take you to when you're working on a project, to do the music? Because I've spoken for example, Alexander Desplat works on like 27 things at the same time. The man is like, you know what I'm talking about. Like, I joke, but he literally, it's crazy how much he can do. Mm-hmm. How much do you feel comfortable accepting on your plate before you're like, this is too much?
First I'd like to say that Alexander is a truly gifted composer. But I'm not 100% sure how he works, but I think he's got a very traditional background where he can basically scribble like a melody on paper with some harmonies and stuff, and it's like, okay, yeah, I think this is done, and then somebody could potentially orchestrate it and record it. Whereas my music relies a lot of production, a lot on sound design, a lot on conceptualizing the sound and how I use surrounds. I mix all my own scores, I record all my own scores. So there's so many man hours disappear in that alone. So I mean, I have the part two of writing the melody, writing the harmony, figure out what would be a nice string arrangement or brass arrangement. I have that part two, but then there's weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of production that goes on top of it. For instance, Man of Steel, Hans and I literally spent 5 months just producing, not even writing melodies and harmonies, just producing the score. Get certain players in, do certain things, process it, work with plugins, time stretch it, pull it apart, back together. It's like, what do you think about this? It's like, no.
By the way, that could explain why I've listened to the soundtrack 1,000 times, or
Maybe.
some obscene number.
Maybe. So that takes a lot of time. So I feel comfortable doing 4 or 5 movies in a year. I can do that. I can't do 27.
Yeah, that's an exaggeration,
No.
but he does a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure. And then, in my world, people know me as being extremely fast. But there's a limit how fast you can go when it comes to this kind of production. I have to say, I did a score once, which was just piano and cello. That was done in 4 days.
Okay, so you can. That's pretty fast.
Yeah, but I mean, because it was an art house film. It only had like 10 pieces of music in the whole hour-and-a-half film. So that if you have the swing of it. Now I would like to throw in a couple of other pointers. What determines the speed? For instance, have you worked with the director before? If it's a new relationship, you have to test the waters and you have to see, what the director likes, what you like. But then once that becomes a match and you're 2-3 movies in, let's take Spielberg and John Williams.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a happy marriage. They know each other inside out. Steve knows if he says, hey, the script is going to be about this, then he knows what John is thinking, and then when John plays some melodies on the piano, Steven Spielberg knows what he's going to get when it's orchestrated. They've been working together forever. So that speeds things up drastically, and that's when you can also be more productive. Another thing is how involved a director or a studio is in the score that's going to be used for the film. There are directors and studios that are so convinced that the movie is going to be awesome, and the director completely trusts his composer, then that becomes easier to score than if you're working on a movie where the test screenings weren't all that great, where there's issue with the storyline, they're having issues with the budget. It's like, are we going to reshoot the ending or not? And it's going to be so much extra money. It's not going to work. Maybe we should bring in a different picture editor and see if we can cut the movie around. In those cases, if you are the composer, it can be a very long, prolonged process when you constantly have to rewrite pieces of music because they're constantly cutting up the movie so different that the music that you had is not going to work. So these are elements that can really influence, the speed in which you work.
No, 100%. What can you talk about as to what's coming up for you? Or are you? It's literally the Fury Road and Batman Superman, and that's the only stuff that you have officially. Okay. Are you exactly? At least say this: you are working on other projects, but you can't talk about them yet. Okay, I understand, and it's probably 4 to 6 of them. But I'm making a joke, but you know what I mean. For people that want to get in the game, who want to compose for movies, is there a little bit of advice that you can share, or a little guidance that you can give them? Especially if you're living in Idaho, you have no Hollywood connection. What would you tell them?
I think let's just keep all the characteristics that you need to have as a person, your personality, all your skill set. Let's leave that out of the equation. Let's say you have them all, and you want to know how to get into this industry. I'd say the most successful way to do it is try if you can be an intern with a well-known composer. Try if you can be an assistant to a composer. I mean, I had a #1 hit in 24 countries, and I seriously thought after moving to LA that the only way to get in is to be somebody's assistant for 8 years, and then see what comes out of that. And it worked for me.
That's actually legit advice.
It's really true. And now, how do you get in contact with these composers? I don't find it all that hard, to be honest, because people mail me on Twitter and say, hey, can I send you my reel, or here, listen to this SoundCloud, and I really want to know what you think, and I actually did, I do check people out, and I actually have flown people out, from Toronto. There was one recently, I think it was Michigan or New Jersey, who came out, to meet, and we talked for like a few days to test, like, if this guy would really go. And one guy was willing to do it, and the other one was not willing to do it. He was not willing to, kiss his whole life goodbye that he had there, come here, make little or no money for a couple of years, and then see if you can make it. And it's really how that starts.
I've said this to other people too, in terms of, for what I do, you have to be willing to pay your dues.
Yeah.
Like you just have to, you know?
And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's not like, I don't treat my assistants bad, like just for the sake of it, so they toughen up. That's not what I mean. But I mean, if you start as my entry level assistant, and you have a great job in Michigan as a piano teacher, and you play in a band on the side, and you do some other stuff on the side, and you make $55,000 a year. There's no way I can pay you $55,000 a year as an entry level salary for being an assistant. It's never going to happen. No, I don't even know how to pay that. So and that's how it that's how it starts. That's already the first hurdle, that people need to take to kiss their life goodbye. Where they have it, it's really a big strain also on your relationship, if you have one, because you could be hammering away for 16-18 hours a day, including the weekends, for years on end, with breaks here and there. But it's definitely tough.
No, 100%. I know you have more stuff to do today, and I do too. I'm just going to say congratulations on everything, and I very much look forward to talking to you again on